Hare Krishna. Welcome back to the live studios here at Wisteria Cottage, sometimes called College, because we're reading the Bhagavatam every night. And Prabhupada said, if you read the Bhagavatam and learn it, you'll have the equivalent of 20 PhDs, because you'll know everything. We're here with the Sankirtan devotees, the book distributors from Wales, and also the Yatra from Kent, London, and Houston, and real international and what's the name of your country? Latvia. So we got a real international situation from Germany, and from all four corners are represented here. Welcome to all of you out in cyberspace. Thank you for coming. Don't forget to share this nectar with your friends. Before we read Srimad-Bhagavatam together, we're going to hear Sanatana Goswami's glorification of the Bhagavatam. Very profound, very sweet, and very deep. So please try to hear nicely. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drik Prada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidvandodita Ditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam. You are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. Don't miss a bit, don't miss a syllable. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nistadaka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy. I bow down to you. Asadu, sadhuta dayin, adini chochata kada, hanamun chagadachin mam, prem narit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Always read the Srimad-Bhagavatam out loud. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So, we've reached the last chapter of the second canto. Chapter 10. We've heard the seed verses of the Bhagavatam, Chatra Shloki it's called, the summary of the whole Bhagavatam in 4 verses, 18,000 verses summarized in 4 verses, and it's all there. Let those who have yours hear. And now we're hearing the answers to the questions asked by Narada to Brahma, given by to the Supreme Personality of God himself. Text 7. The Supreme One, who is celebrated as the Supreme Being, or the Supreme Soul, is the supreme source of the cosmic manifestation, as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the supreme fountainhead, the Absolute Truth. Purport. Synonyms for the supreme source of all energies are given in the very beginning of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Janmad Yasya Yataha. And in the second chapter, Vedanti Tat Tattvavidas Tattvam Yaj Jnanam Advayam Brahmiti Paramatmeti Bhagavan Iti Shabhyate. Here the synonyms are Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The word iti, used in the verse under discussion, completes the synonyms and thus indicates Bhagavan. This will be further explained in later verses. But the word Bhagavan ultimately means Lord Krishna, because the Srimad-Bhagavatam has already accepted the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Krishna. Krishnas tu, Bhagavan, Swayam. The original source of all energies, or the summum bonum, is the Absolute Truth, which is called Parabrahman, etc. And Bhagavan is the last word of the Absolute Truth. But even with the synonyms for Bhagavan, such as Narayana, Vishnu, and Purusha, the last word is Krishna, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Ahang sarvasya prabhavo mattak sarvam pravartate. Besides that, the Srimad-Bhagavatam is the representation of Lord Krishna as a sound incarnation of the Lord. Krishne sudamo pagate dharma jnanadibi saha kalo nashtarisham esha puranarko dunoditaha. Thus, by general conclusion, Lord Krishna is the ultimate source of all energies of Krishna. The Srimad-Bhagavatam, Thus, by general conclusion, Lord Krishna is the ultimate source of all energies, and the word Krishna means that. And to explain Krishna, or the science of Krishna, the Srimad-Bhagavatam has been prepared. In the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, this truth is indicated in the questions and answers by Sutta Goswami and great sages like Shonaka. And in the first and second chapters of the canto, this is explained. In the third chapter, this subject is more explicit, and in the fourth chapter, even more explicit. In the second canto, the Absolute Truth as the personality of Godhead is further emphasized, and the indication is the Supreme Lord Krishna. The summary of Srimad Bhagavatam in 4 verses, as we have already discussed, is succinct. This Supreme Personality of Godhead and the ultimate issue is confirmed by Brahma in his Brahma Samhita as Ishvara Parama Krishna, Sachidananda Vigraha. So it is concluded in the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The complete subject matter is elaborately explained in the 10th and 11th cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the matter of the Manvantaras, or reigns of the Manus, such as the Swayambhuva Manvantara and Chakshusha Manvantara, as they are discussed in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna is indicated. In the 8th canto, in reference to the Vaivasvata Manvantara, the same subject is explained indirectly, and in the 9th canto, the same purport is there. In the 12th canto, the same is further explained, specifically regarding the different incarnations of the Lord. Thus it is concluded, by studying the complete Srimad Bhagavatam, that Lord Sri Krishna is the ultimate summum bonum, or the ultimate source of all energy. And according to the grades of worshippers, the indications of the nomenclature may be differently explained as Narayana, Brahman, Paramatma, etc. So basically what this means is that the Srimad-Bhagavatam is structured in such a way as to expand one's consciousness to the point where one can understand all of the potencies of the Absolute Truth, until finally the Absolute Truth is revealed in the 10th canto as Krishna, and then it's all tied up in the 11th and 10th cantos together by Krishna himself, especially in the Uddhava Gita. So in the preface to the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada gives the only qualification for understanding the Bhagavatam. Well, sincerity, honesty, freedom from envy. But in another sense, just to hear verse by verse, purport by purport, verse by verse, purport by purport, all the way through, cover to cover. That expands your consciousness to the point where you can actually understand who Krishna is and want to love him. That's the goal of Krishna consciousness, to want to love him. Text 8. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Adhyatmic person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Adidaivic. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adibhotic person. Purport. The supreme controlling Samam Bonam is the personality of Godhead in his plenary portion of Paramatma, or the Supersoul manifestation. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.42 it is said, Atava bahunaitena kim gyatena tevarjana vishtabhyaham idam kritsnam ekankshena stito jagat. All the controlling deities, like Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, are different manifestations of the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who exhibits himself in such manners by entering into each and every universe generated from him. But still apparently, there are divisions of the controller and the controlled. For example, in the food controlling department, the controller of food is the person made of the same ingredients as the person who is controlled. Shall I say that again? For example, in the food controlling department, the controller of food is a person made of the same ingredients as the person who is controlled. Similarly, each and every individual in the material world is controlled by the higher demigods. For example, we have our senses, but the senses are controlled by superior controlling deities. We cannot see without light, and the supreme controller of light is the sun. The sun god is in the sun planet, and we, the individual human beings, or any other being on this earth, are all controlled by the sun god as far as our eyes are concerned. Similarly, all the senses we have are controlled by the superior demigods, who are also as much living entities as we are. But one is empowered while the other is controlled. The controlled living entity is called the Adhyatmic person, and the controller is called the Adidaivic person. All these positions in the material world are due to different fruitive activities. Any individual living being can become the sun god, or even Brahma, or any other god in the upper planetary system by a higher grade of pious work. And similarly, one becomes controlled by the higher demigods by lower grades of fruitive activities. So every individual living entity is subject to the supreme control of the Paramatma, who puts everyone in different positions of the controller and the controlled. That which distinguishes the controller and the controlled, that is, the material body, is called the adibhotic Purusha. The body is sometimes called Purusha, as confirmed in the Vedas, in the following hymn. Sava Esha Purushona Rasamaya. This body is called the Anarasa embodiment. This body depends on food. The living entity which is embodied does not eat anything. However, because the owner is spirit in essence, I'll read that again. The living entity which is embodied does not eat anything. However, because the owner is spirit in essence. The material body requires replacement of matter because of the wearing and tearing of the mechanical body. Just stick around, boy. It'll happen to you too. Therefore, the distinction between the individual living entity and controlling planetary deities is in the Anarasamaya body. The sun may have a gigantic body, and the man may have a smaller body, but all these visible bodies are made of matter. Nonetheless, the sun god and the individual person, who are related as the controller and the controlled, are equivalent spiritual parts and parcels of the Supreme Being. And it is the Supreme Being who places different parts and parcels in different positions. And thus the conclusion is that the Supreme Person is the shelter of all. Text 9. All three of the above-mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being, as the shelter of the shelter, sees every one of them and is independent of all. Therefore, he is the supreme shelter. Purport. There are innumerable living entities, one dependent on the other, in the relationship of the controlled and the controller. But without the medium of perception, no one can know or understand who is the controlled and who is the controller. For example, the sun controls the power of our vision. We can see the sun because the sun has its body, and the sunlight is useful only because we have eyes. Without our having eyes, the sunlight is useless, and without sunlight, the eyes are useless. Thus, they are interdependent. Neither of them is independent. Therefore, a natural question arises: who made them interdependent? The one who has made such a relationship of interdependence must be, ultimately, completely independent. As stated in the beginning of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, the ultimate source of all interdependent objects is the completely independent subject. This ultimate source of all interdependence is the Supreme Truth, or Paramatma, the Supersoul, who is not dependent on anything else. He is Shwarashashrayaha, dependent only on himself, and thus he is the supreme shelter of everything. Still, Paramatma and Brahman are subordinate to Bhagavan because Bhagavan is Purushottama, or the superperson, the source of both the Supersoul and Brahman. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that he is the Purushottama and the source of everything, and thus it is concluded that Sri Krishna is the ultimate source and shelter of all entities, including the Supersoul and the Supreme Brahman. Even accepting that there is no difference between the Supersoul and the individual soul is dependent on the Supersoul for being liberated from the illusion of the material energy. The individual is under the clutches of the illusory energy, and therefore, although qualitatively one with the Supersoul, he is under the illusion of identifying himself with matter. And to get out of this illusory conception of factual life, the individual soul has to depend on the Supersoul to be recognized as one with him. In that sense also, the Supersoul is the supreme shelter, and there is no doubt about it. So the scientists are trying to put chemicals together to create life, isn't it? They're trying. But they can't think, the life's already going on, and the chemicals aren't, when the scientist is in the laboratory and he's putting the chemicals together, he's putting the chemicals together. So life is already there, and their hypothesis is that the combination of chemicals makes life. But they can't understand that somebody has to be, if the chemicals can't manipulate one another, they're not like putting themselves in together. They have to do it. They sit there and put the chemicals there and then watch, and let the chemicals, come together and then produce life. But this is what it means, that there must be an independent person to manipulate the thing so that it comes into being. Matter doesn't move without the soul, without the consciousness, without the independent conscious living entity. The individual living entity, the jiva, is always dependent on the supersoul, Paramatma, because the individual soul forgets his spiritual identity, whereas the supersoul, Paramatma, does not forget his transcendental position. In the Bhagavad Gita, these separate positions of the Jivatma and the Paramatma are specifically mentioned. In the 4th chapter, Arjuna, the Jiva soul, is represented as forgetful of his many, many previous births. But the Lord, the Supersoul, is not forgetful. The Lord even remembers when he taught the Bhagavad Gita to the sun god some billions of years before. The Lord can remember such millions and billions of years as stated in the Bhagavad Gita as follows: Vidaham samatitani vartamanani charjana bhavishani chabutani mam tu vedana kaschana. The Lord, in his eternal blissful body of knowledge, is fully aware of all that happened in the past, that which is going on at the present, and also what will happen in the future. But in spite of his being the shelter of both the Paramatma and Brahman, persons with the forefront of knowledge are unable to understand him as he is. The propaganda of the identity of cosmic consciousness with the consciousness of individual living entities is completely misleading, because even such a person or individual soul as Arjuna could not remember his past deeds, although he is always with the Lord. And what can the tiny ordinary man, falsely claiming to be one with the cosmic consciousness, know about his past, present, and future? Text 10. After separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance for the first Purusha avatar, entered into each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water, Garbhodaka. Purport. After analysis of the living entities and the Supreme Lord, Paramatma, the independent source of all other living beings, Srila Shukadeva Goswami is now presenting the prime necessity for devotional service to the Lord, which is the only occupational business of all living entities. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and all his plenary portions and extensions of plenary portions are non-different from one another, and thus the supreme independence is in each and every one of them. In order to prove this, Shukadeva Goswami, as promised to King Parikshit, describes herein the independence of the Purusha avatar, personality of Godhead, even in the sphere of material creation. Such activities of the Lord are also transcendental, and therefore they are also lila, or pastimes, of the Absolute Lord. Such pastimes of the Lord are very conducive to the hearers for self-realization in the field of devotional service. Some may argue, why not then relish the transcendental Leela of the Lord as exhibited in the land of Mathura and Vrindavan, which are sweeter than anything in the world? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur replies that the pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan are meant to be relished by advanced devotees of the Lord. Neophyte devotees will misunderstand such supreme transcendental activities of the Lord, and therefore the Lord's pastimes in the material sphere related to creation, maintenance, and destruction are verily relishable by the Prakrita Bhaktas, or mundane devotees of the Lord. As the yoga system, mainly based on bodily exercises, is meant for the person who is too much attached to the bodily conception of existence, similarly, the Lord's pastimes related to the creation and destruction of the material world are for those who are too materially attached. For such mundane creatures, the functions of the body and the functions of the cosmic world through physical laws in relationship with the Lord are also therefore included in understanding of the lawmaker with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The scientists explain the material functions by so many technological terms of material law, but such blind scientists forget the lawmaker. That was the point I was making before. The Srimad-Bhagavatam points out the lawmaker. One should not be amazed by the mechanical arrangement of the complicated engine or dynamo, but one should praise the engineer who creates such a wonderful working machine. That is the difference between the devotee and the non-devotee. Devotees are always full with praising the Lord, who directs the physical laws. In the Bhagavad Gita 9.10, the direction of the Lord upon the material nature is described as follows: Maya jakshena prakriti suyate chacharacharam hetunan inikonteya jagad viparivartate. The material nature, full of physical laws, is one of my different energies. Therefore, it is neither independent nor blind. Because I am transcendentally all-powerful, simply by my glancing over material nature, the physical laws of nature work so wonderfully. Pretty far out translation by Prabhupada, that verse. The actions and reactions of the physical laws work on that account, and thus the material world is created, maintained, and annihilated again and again. Men with the poor fund of knowledge, however, become astonished by studying the physical laws both within the construction of the individual body and within the cosmic manifestation. And foolishly, they decry the existence of God, taking it for granted that the physical laws are independent, without any metaphysical control. The Bhagavad Gita replies to this foolishness in the following words: Abhajananti mam mudha manushim tanamasritam param bhavavajananto mamabhuta maheshwaram. The foolish men, mudhas, do not know the personality of Godhead in his eternal form of bliss and knowledge. The foolish man thinks of the transcendental body of the Lord as something like his own, and therefore he cannot think of the unlimited controlling power of the Lord, who is not visible in the acting of the physical laws. The Lord is, however, visible to the naked eyes of people in general when he descends by his own personal potency. Lord Krishna incarnated himself as he is and played very wonderful parts as the Lord himself, and the Bhagavad Gita concerns such wonderful actions and knowledge. Yet foolish men will not accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Lord. Generally, they consider the infinitesimal and infinite features of the Lord because they themselves, generally they consider the infinitesimal and infinite features of the Lord because they themselves are unable to become either the infinitesimal or the infinite. But one should know that the infinite and the infinitesimal sizes of the Lord are not his highest glories. The most wonderful manifestation of the Lord's power is exhibited when the infinite Lord becomes visible to our eyes as one of us. I heard Gopi Purandarapur say something wonderful about this. He was saying how the impersonalists interpret many of the verses in the Upanishads as proving that the Lord has no qualities. Because it says, he has no eyes and but he can see everything. He has no legs, but he can run faster than anyone, and so on and so forth. So Gopi Purandan was saying that if someone doesn't exist, then to call him invisible is nothing. But if someone exists and he has the ability to be invisible, that's a power. That's a quality. So because they don't accept that Krishna exists, they can't be amazed with this power. You get the point? If someone doesn't exist and yet can be invisible, that's a very powerful quality to have. If someone doesn't exist, then to be invisible doesn't mean anything. So that's the only way they can rationalize thinking that he doesn't exist, or that he doesn't have any qualities, that he doesn't exist. Anyway, Gopi's quite a philosopher. Yet foolish men will not accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Lord. I'm just repeating this again. Generally, they consider the infinitesimal and infinite features of the Lord because they themselves are unable to become either the infinitesimal or the infinite. But one should know that the infinite and infinitesimal sizes of the Lord are not his highest glories. The most wonderful manifestation of the Lord's power is exhibited when the infinite Lord becomes visible to our eyes as one of us. Yet his activities are different from those of the finite beings. Lifting a mountain at the age of 7 years and marrying 16,000 wives in the prime of his youth are some of the examples of his infinite energy. But the Mudhas, after seeing them or hearing about them, decry them as legendary and take the Lord as one of them. They cannot understand that the Lord Sri Krishna, although in the form of a human being by his own potency, is still the Supreme Lord with full potency as the Supreme Controller. So it's very important. This is a very important subject matter. Why? Why is it so important?
Because it's talking about the existence of Krishna in personal form, and that's his highest.
Because you can't love someone unless you know them very well. What is love between one person and another? It's intimate. It's the most intimate relationship. You can't love someone really unless you really know them really well. Isn't it? Is it not? Is it or is it not? Is it?
It is.
Thank you. Therefore, this is very important to understand all these things about the Lord. Because the more we understand just how great he is and how, God is great, they say this, and then they kill somebody thinking that he's great and now I'm going to, whatever they're thinking, crazy things they're thinking, they have no idea how great he is. Therefore there's no love, and therefore they can kill other living beings who are equally parts and parcel of the same creator, the same source. So we can not only can we not love Krishna, we can't even get along with one another until we understand these things. Therefore, the book distribution is so important.
Yeah.
There's so much quarreling going on. There's so much misunderstanding going on between people because they're ignorant. They have no idea who they are. They have no idea what the world is. They have no idea who God is. And therefore, there's no possibility of there being peace in the world. And without peace, what cannot happen? Happiness. We are here, gentlemen, to make others happy. That's the only reason we're here. That is the mission of the devotee of the Lord, to make other people happy, not ourselves. Just to make other people happy. That is the service attitude. And that service will make us happy. And we will no longer feel bored or restless or whatever. When, however, the mudhas give submissive oral reception to the messages of the Lord in the Srimad-Bhagavatam or the Srimad Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam, transmitted through the channel of disciplic succession, such mudhas also become devotees of the Lord by the grace of His pure devotees. And for this reason only, in both the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, the pastimes of the Lord in the material world are delineated for the benefit of those men with the poor fund of knowledge. That's us. That's why we're here in the material world. And this is the only way out. Text 11. That Supreme Person is not impersonal and therefore is distinctively a Nara, or person. Therefore the transcendental water created from the Supreme Nara is known as Nara. And because he lies down in that water, he is known as Narayana. And where does that water come from?
His body.
Yes, his perspiration. I mean, we can sweat, we can create, this much water. You could all put it all together and then put it in one thing, we'll make this much water. So why can't God make an ocean? Why not? One should definitely know, text 11, text 12. One should definitely know that all material ingredients, activities, time, and modes, and the living entities, who are meant to enjoy them all, exist by His mercy only. And as soon as He does not care for them, everything becomes non-existent. Purport. This is how we get serious. To learn this, to know this, to assimilate this, this is how we get serious. Purport. The living entities are the enjoyers of the material ingredients, time, modes, etc., because they want to lord it over the material nature. The Lord is the supreme enjoyer, and the living entities are meant to assist the Lord in His enjoyment, and thus participate in the transcendental enjoyment of everyone. The enjoyer and the enjoyed both participate in enjoyment. But deluded by the illusory energy, the living entities want to become the enjoyer like the Lord, although they are not meant for such enjoyment. The jivas, the living entities, are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita as the Lord's superior nature, or para prakriti, and so also it is mentioned in the Vishnu Purana. Therefore, the living entities are never the Purushas or the factual enjoyers. As such, the spirit of enjoyment by the living entity in the material world is false. In the spiritual world, the living entities are pure in nature, and therefore they are associates in the enjoyment of the Supreme Lord. In the material world, the spirit of enjoyment of the living entities, by dint of their own actions, karma, gradually fades by the laws of nature. And thus the illusory energy dictates in the ears of the conditioned souls that they should become one with the Lord. This is the last snare of the illusory energy. When the last illusion is also cleared off by the mercy of the Lord, the living entity becomes reinstated in his original position and thus becomes actually liberated. For this attainment of liberation from the material clutches, the Lord creates the material world, maintains it for some time, 1,000 years of his measurement, as stated in the previous verse, and then again annihilates it by his will. The living entities are therefore completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord, and all their so-called enjoyments, by scientific improvement, are crushed into dust when the Lord desires. Text 13. The Lord, while lying on his bed of mystic slumber, generated the seminal symbol, golden in hue, through his external energy, out of his desire to manifest varieties of living entities from himself alone. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 9, 7, and 8, the creation and annihilation of the material world are stated as follows. Sarva bhutani konteya prakritim yanti mamikam kalpakshayi punasthani kalpado vishijamyaham prakritim swam abastabhya vishijami puna punaha bhuttagramamimam kritstam avasham prakriter vishat. At the end of each millennium, the creative forces, namely the material nature and the living entities who struggle in the material nature, all merge together into the transcendental body of the Lord. And again, when the Lord desires to manifest them, all of them are again displayed by the Lord. Therefore, the material nature is working under the control of the Lord. All manifestations under the agency of material nature and under the control of the Lord are thus repeatedly created and annihilated by the will of the Lord. Therefore, before the creation or manifestation of the material cosmic world, the Lord exists as total energy, Maha Samashti, and thus desiring himself to be diffused to many, he expands himself further into the multi-total energy, Samashti. From the multi-total energy, he further expands himself into individuals in 3 dimensions, namely Adhyatmic, Adidaivic, and Adibautic, as explained before, Vyasti. As such, the whole creation and the creative energies are non-different and different simultaneously. Because everything is an emanation from him, the Mahavishnu or Mahasamashti, nothing of the cosmic energies is different from him. But all such expanded energies have specific functions and display as designed by the Lord, and therefore they are simultaneously different from the Lord. The living entities are also similar energy, marginal potency of the Lord, and thus they are simultaneously one with and different from him. The stage of non-manifestation, the living energies, at this stage of non-manifestation, the living energies remain potent in the Lord, and when they are let loose in the cosmic manifestation, they are exhibited differently in terms of different desires under the modes of nature. Such differential manifestations of the living energies are conditional states of the living entities. The liberated living entities, however, in the Sanatana eternal manifestation, are unconditionally surrendered souls, and therefore they are not subject to the conditions of creation and annihilation. So this creation takes place by the glance of the Lord from his bedstead of mystic slumber. And thus all the universes and the Lord of the universe, Brahma, are again and again manifested and annihilated. All of these things should put things into proper perspective. If we can memorize these things and repeat them even without full understanding, repeat them and explain them in detail so it all fits together and we can explain it to another person. This is a very deep thing, and it brings us closer to how do I say? Freedom from sentiment. Freedom from sentiment brings us into knowledge. And the more the knowledge becomes realized, the more the knowledge becomes actualized by our assimilating and then looking out and seeing the world through that knowledge, the more we become detached from that energy. And we no longer go chasing after it like a camel after a mirage in the desert. We're thinking we're to regulate our senses, and we think we're losing our freedom. I want to be free, but what are we free? Is anybody free? Anybody not want to be sick? Anybody not get sick? Anybody want to get sick? Anybody want to break their arm? Anybody want to die? Anybody hasn't died? Then we're in control? I don't think so. So the more we can see this for ourselves, the more we become detached from the influence of it, and we can move freely in it, in devotional service. We see a pretty girl. No, I don't think so. Because we're choosing not to do that. That's freedom. We hear a sound that's, agitating in certain ways, agitating, stimulating to the senses, agitating. Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bharatarshaba papanam prajihiyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. That tendency to run after the senses and the sense objects, that is jnana vijnana nashanam. It's the destroyer of jnana, knowledge, and vijnana, self-realization. Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bharatarshaba. Therefore, in the very beginning, Arjuna, regulate the senses and conquer this enemy, of this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. You can't know what you're doing without this knowledge. You're just a pawn in material energy being batted around, like a ping pong ball, poof, 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 in the waves of the material nature. And we're thinking we're free. So the purpose of this knowledge is very, very important, to actually understand it, to try to understand it, and to keep trying to understand it until you understand it. Until you can put the pieces together, until all the pieces come together and you can see what you are, what the material world is, what the source is. Then you can be free. Very important. Okay, text 14. Just hear from me how the potency of his lordship divides one into three, called the controlling entities, the controlled entities, and the material bodies, in the manner mentioned above. Text 15. from the sky situated within the transcendental body of the manifesting Mahavishnu, sensory energy, mental force, and bodily strength are all generated, as well as the sum total of the fountainhead of the total living force. 16. As the followers of a king follow their Lord, similarly, when the total energy is in motion, all other living entities move. And when the total energy stops endeavoring, all other living entities stop sensual activities. Purport. The individual living entities are completely dependent on the total energy of the Supreme Purusha. No one has independent existence, just as no electric lamp has independent effulgence. Each and every electrical instrument depends fully on the total powerhouse. The total powerhouse depends on the reservoir of water for generating electricity, or solar panels. Nowadays they have solar panels. But anyway, this is just an example. The sun depends on creation, and the creation depends on the movement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes. So we'll stop there. Hare Krishna. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. So now we come to a nice part of our program. We have reflections. Anything that you heard that stood out and that you want to reflect, you want to repeat it again, to share with the others. Any doubts, any thing that you didn't understand that you want to understand, please feel free. Yes, Mantri, Raja, the king of advisors.
I like the part where it mentioned how the most wonderful feat of the Supreme Lord is his manifesting himself amongst us, and how you pointed out that being invisible is not very wonderful for someone who doesn't exist, but for someone who does exist, that's amazing. And then that he's actually invisible, but then he manifests himself.
Even more amazing. Yes, exactly. That's his greatest mercy.
Yeah.
And then he allows us to serve him. And then he serves his devotees. That's the greatest mercy. That's even greater. That's his greatest mercy. Therefore he comes in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and shows us how to be a devotee of himself and how we can serve one another in loving service. That's Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yeah. So we can't feel genuine affection unless we actually understand this. We can't feel genuine affection for the Lord unless we understand that, it's because of him that we're even here. We have this body, that we're trying to think of every different ways we can make it better and enjoy and whatever and control and all these things. But all those things, they were given to us. We don't have anything to do with it, actually. It comes right back to what I said before. You can't love Krishna unless you understand these things and feel what gratitude, deep, abiding gratitude at every moment for what he's given us. Yes, Gopal.
Because that's Prabhupada raised the question that some people might question why listen to these things? Why not just listen to Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan? Krishna meant to be the sweetest.
So you're pointing out what was said in the purports about this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead. So explain.
But you won't. The layman wouldn't understand Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan and his position
Yeah.
without understanding.
Yes. Exactly. He can't understand. He must mistake it for being ordinary human being unless he understands that this is Krishna's potency, what he's capable of doing and what he's doing. Which comes back to his point also, how when he comes and manifests himself so we can actually see him face to face. That's really wonderful.
I just wondering, in relation to the point that makes about how for a mundane person these pastimes of the creation and maintenance of the universe is equally relishable kind of thing.
And important.
Very relishable.
Yes.
Just wondering, because the main thing we do, the main thing is the work that we do is to hear and chant about Krishna and his pastimes.
Yes.
In the beginning of the second canto, it also talks about understanding that things like the Rupa, the super soul, and things like that as well.
Yeah.
And then in the third chapter, it talks about the change of heart, how we should hear and chant about
Yes. Yes.
I'm just wondering, to what extent do we take instructions of the first chapters of the second canto seriously?
I see.
Actually,
To the extent that if we see, this is what honesty means. This is what honesty means. You know, if you're still controlled by the material energy, then it's very important, these things, for you to hear. That's why it's important for us to become actually honest, to be able to admit, you know, who we are in relationship with Krishna. You know, as we become closer to Krishna, if we're actually becoming closer to Krishna, or not just closer proximity to the form, but proximity of knowing, of understanding, then we'll understand how insignificant we are, how tiny we are, how helpless we are. You know. So one of the things that it said in that section was, if I remember right, that it's very important that a person who is materialistic still identifying with the body and not, you know, free from that identification, to hear these first three cantos very carefully. You know, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't go on and hear everything. We should go hear everything, but we should dwell here until we become clear, until we become, you know, detached. Like I said before, the test of whether we're advancing is how detached we're becoming from the influence of the material energy. As long as we're attached to the influence of material energy, it's very important for us to continually hear these things so that we can understand, and the more we understand, the more we become detached. And if we can't understand, if we're too thick, if we're too dull, if we're too conditioned by the mode of ignorance, then we won't be able to understand. And then we have to continue very carefully follow the rules and regulations, not be lax, not be lazy, not be inattentive to detail, to the details of our lives, staying clean, staying neat, you know, treating each person with proper respect, because they're also parts of Krishna. You know, that's the fourth chapter of the Gita. Yad kyatva na punar moham evam yasasi pandava yena bhutanya sheshane draksha sat manyato mayi. Once you've received this knowledge from a self-realized soul, then you'll never fall into illusion again. Because why? Because you'll see that all living beings are but part and parcel of the Supreme, or in other words, Krishna says, they're mine. So how can you disrespect or neglect or, you know, not properly treat, you know, someone who's dear to Krishna, who belongs to Krishna? That's why this process of Sankirtan, where you go out and you meet people and, you know, show them these books and try to convince them to take these books and give this knowledge to people, you know, it's so important. You get an education doing that, you can't get anywhere else. That's the truth. You realize this philosophy quicker and deeper in doing this than any other service. My humble opinion. Yes.
I just since when we out a lot the example where it's given that the eye is useless without the sun, and the sunlight is useless without the eye, and that
Yes.
actually like pointing out that there's someone independent stands behind that. And the example of the laboratory is kind of just really sprung up in my mind that the person thinks like, wow, amazing, there's life and they forget themselves.
Exactly.
It's kind of
Exactly.
like
Exactly. Very nice. Another example that Prabhupada used is the king. There's no meaning to the word king without subjects. And there's no meaning to the word subjects without the king. So wherever everyone and everything is interdependent in that way. There's just an example. So again, when we realize that, we'll be careful. You know? What was that verse? Atma pamina sarvatra. Sarvam na sarvam. Somebody knows the verse? Atmaiva. No. Atma pamya sarvatra. Sarvam pashati ordina. Sukham va yadiva dukham. Sukham va yadiva dukham. I can't remember the last line. Somebody, you know the last line? No? Are you kidding me? You know everything. Just blew my whole thing. Sukham va yadivadutam sayogi paramo mata. Sayogi paramo mata. Sayogi paramo mata. He's the greatest yogi. He sees everyone equally in their happiness and distress because of his own experience. We know what it means to be distressed, so when we see other people in distress, we should feel for them. When we see somebody happy, then we should be happy. And if we're envious, then we see somebody happy and we'll be distressed. We see somebody in distress and we'll be happy. We'll always want to be putting ourselves above others. But that's illusion. Because it's, eko bahu nam yo vridantakam, and there's only one person who's taking care of all the rest of us. We can't take care of each other. We can take care of each other to the extent that we are surrendered to Krishna and therefore empowered by Krishna. Then we can help others, but only to that extent, only in that way, actually. These people who accumulate a great amount of wealth and a great amount of popularity and a great amount of power and whatever, they're suffering like wounded dogs, So miserable because somebody's going to take something away from me, So attached. Somebody's going to take something away from me, I'm so attached. Then I feel bitter and I feel resentful and I feel horrible. So that's just the opposite of devotional service. Therefore, Prabhupada said, there is no love in this material world. Because everything's temporary. All the forms are temporal. You can't love anyone or anything in this material world. Because even if you get attached to it, it's going to go. If it's not now, then 10 minutes from now, if not then. 3 years from now, if not then. 50 years from now, if not then. 100 years. Nothing's going to stay. Nothing. So if you're attached and if you're dependent on your happiness for some external form, some external thing, you're just doomed to be frustrated and restless all the time. Therefore, if you fix your mind on Krishna, and that's what he says, Manmana Bhavamad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru Mame Vaishachase Prisane Priyosime. Just become my devotee. Think of me. Always worship me. Offer your homage unto me. Then you'll come to me because you'll be my very dear friend, and I'll come and get you. Therefore, Prabhupada says, don't try to see Krishna. Act in such a way as Krishna will want to come and see you. Because that's the only way you can see Krishna. You can't make the sun come up when you want. It comes up in its own sweet will. But to speak of Krishna. So just see what the Bhagavatam does. It gives us the history of the universe. All the most important events of the universe, the most important events, the essential events where the Lord comes personally and shows and does things to save the day, time after time after time after time, infallible, achyuta, infallible, unconquerable. So what does Lord Brahma say? Jnane Priyasam Udapasya Namanteva. Some things, I can't remember. Mukuritam. Where are we? Don't let me forget it's 17. $14. Jnane Priyasam Upa. Okay, I'll find it this way. We'll get it. Patience. Trying to find this. Canto 10. Ah, got it. Jnane prayasam udapasya namante eva jivanti san mukoritam bhavadiya vartam stane stitak shudikatam tanuvan manobir ye prayasho jita jito pyasitrilokyam. Those who, even while remaining situated in their established social positions, throw away the process of speculative knowledge, and with their body, words, and mind, offer all respect to descriptions of your personality and activities, dedicating their lives to these narrations, which are vibrated by you personally and by your pure devotees. Certainly conquer your lordship, although you are otherwise unconquerable by anyone within the three worlds. This was what Lord Chaitanya accepted from Ramananda Roy when he was asking Ramananda Roy questions. And he rejected the Varnashram, he rejected the renunciation, he rejected the knowledge, he rejected everything. When it came to the giving up speculating, giving up trying to understand something just by speculating about it, guesswork, and hear from pure devotees about the Lord, that's it. In this age, that's it. Stay where you are and just do this. I'll read that again. Such a wonderful verse, isn't it? Those who, even while remaining situated in their established social positions, throw away the process of speculative knowledge, and with their body, words, and mind, offer all respects to descriptions of your personality and activities, dedicating their lives to these narrations, which are vibrated by you personally and by your pure devotees, certainly conquer your lordship, although you are otherwise unconquerable by anyone within the three worlds. So the scientists are busy trying to conquer the laws of nature and are getting smashed to smithereens more and more every year as they wind up their, activities to, not wind up, I mean to gear up their activities to try to do that. Reminds me of Jarasandha, coming to conquer Krishna 17 times, getting his whole army completely annihilated, only him left, and he gets the, oh, go ahead, go. He runs away like a wounded dog with a tail between his legs. And then he goes in his so-called advisors. That was just a fluke, I mean, you know how powerful you are. We know how powerful you are. Anyway, I'm highly impressed by your, we do this every day, I've been doing it for a very long time, and I'm very impressed with the observations and the questions and the reflections. You're doing well.
I'm not doing anything.
That's why you're doing well. Can't get out of it. Krishna wants to give you credit. You get the credit. That's it. Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to stop here. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Pleasure is all mine to be with you. Thank you very much, everyone in cyberspace. I'm sure you enjoyed the wonderful association with the book distributors, Srila Prabhupada's warriors out there, going out and meeting people every day on the streets, giving out this knowledge to them. Thank you very much. Please come again soon, like tomorrow. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo. Okay, share.